First off, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
When I say Vietnam, what goes through your mind?
My childhood, mostly.
Yeah. Good thoughts, bad thoughts, complicated thoughts?
Complicated thoughts.
Yeah. Why?
It's a blend of being a child and running around and eating my favorite things, and then the nighttime worries. My grandmother always worried that we couldn't go out at night. We couldn't just let anyone come to our house. It was a lot of scary things that I didn't understand as a child, but I just knew that it was different probably than a regular childhood.
Yeah. So you could hear, you didn't actually see, but you could hear.
You could hear from a distance bombs going off, and we just called it the war. But it was distant, and then you could see the news. On the news, I'm not sure if they were Scud missiles, but you could see the things on the news that was happening, and you can see the progress of the war moving down the map.
Yeah.
So,
What were you thinking when you were 8 years old in the middle of this?
I don't know that I really thought about what was going on. I just knew that it was every day. It was just something we do every day. My mother and my father, my stepfather, but he's the only father I've known, they left to go to Alaska in 1974 and left us in boarding schools. And so we knew something was up because they went to set up house and they were going to send for us. But I don't think anybody in Vietnam knew what was coming on April 30th. It was just all not the reality that anybody wanted to acknowledge.
Yeah. What was your April 30th like?
Well, the couple of days leading up to it was knowing that at any time my grandmother was going to pick us up and we were going to have to go. And then that happened. And so we were rushed from where she picked us up. We went to the embassy and then had to fight our way to the front. And we all had passports that my grandmother kept. And then she handed us over to some guy at the gate. And then we fought our way into there. And we barely had time to say goodbye. And then my sister was in charge and we followed her. We went through that gate and now years later I realized it was a bunch of Marines, but we didn't know. So, once we went through the gate, it was 5 of us trying to get to where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. What was it like outside the gate? I mean, you weren't the only ones trying to get through.
It was crushing crowds. I think that was the scariest thing that I remember being small, was I was going to get crushed in this crowd. And we were all holding hands, making sure that we had contact with each other. But, it was scary.
And you had to leave your grandmother
I did.
behind.
I left my grandmother and my aunt.
Is that hard?
I never saw my grandmother again. She died in a re-education camp. And so she was the person who took care of me because my mom was busy with my stepfather. And so yeah, it was hard knowing that I wasn't going to see her again. And she even said that. She was one of those, I was born in Vietnam, I'll die in Vietnam. I'm never going to leave.
Yeah.
So.
So you get through the gate. It's a big achievement back then. Then what happens?
We run into my dad's friend, a man named Jim, and his family. And he's a big white man. And we just followed him. And literally, he just kind of scooped everybody up and pushed us and got us, closer to the front.
You see the iconic shot of the helicopter sitting on top of the embassy and this long line of people and this ladder, basically, that leads them up. You were one of those people?
I was one of those people. Had no idea what was going to happen. Had never flown before. I'm not sure I even have seen a helicopter up to that point. And I just literally followed my sister.
Yeah.
Wherever she went, I went.
Yeah. What do you think when you see that picture now?
Those stairs are rickety.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like, I was small. I don't know how it all happened. And, how I ended up where I was.
Yeah. So you get to the top and you finally get on. What was it like getting to the top and getting on the helicopter?
I was terrified. I still have a height issue to this day.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
Yeah. So then what happens?
So then we end up at the airport, and they load us up onto the back of, now I know it's a C-130. I didn't know then. But the back came down, and we walked up, and they had us all sitting down, and there was no strapping in or anything. It was a whole bunch of people just crammed into this airplane, and then I started getting sick.
Yeah.
The smell and I think I saw somebody else get sick, and then I started being sick.
Yeah. And that's when you decided, it was in that moment, somewhere in there, that you decided to become, to join the Air Force?
Yeah.
What happened?
I was, we were in the air. We were headed to the Philippines because that's where we landed first. And the guy, who now I know is a loadmaster, was trying to help because I was so sick. And he was trying to give me water, and he was talking to me, but I didn't understand what he was saying. And then he was just really a nice guy, and I said, I'm going to do that. And at the time I'm sick, air sick.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why it came into my head that I was going to wear that flight suit and do that job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was this actually on April 30th when you got out?
I don't think it was on April 30th.
Yeah,
I think it was probably April 29th. Or, something like that. It was crushing crowds all rushing to the U.S. Embassy. So I think it's pretty darn close. I don't have actual dates and times.
Yeah, I just was curious, when you look back now, what do you think?
You wish you would have known certain things, like that was the last night I was going to be in Vietnam. That was the last time I was going to see my grandmother. I'm never going to get on a moped with 5 other people again. Like all those things that you just didn't know that was the last thing.
Yeah.
I think that was how I feel about it.
And you left right from school.
Went right from school. I was still in my school clothes and had nothing else. No other clothes. My grandmother handed out our gold necklaces that we each had one with a Buddha on it, and she couldn't find mine. I was the only one without one, and to this day that still bothers me.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we're gonna have to get you a Buddha necklace.
I
know. So you make it to eventually where?
Alaska. My parents, my dad worked for Sealand. I don't know if you remember the truck with the symbol. He worked for Sealand, and Sealand sent him to Vietnam, and then they sent him to Alaska. And so he worked in Anchorage, Alaska, and that was where we ended up. We were the first Vietnamese family to land in Anchorage, Alaska.
That's a legacy right there.
I think so. There was a
Yeah.
news article about it.
Yeah. And you thought that was what the U.S. was like.
I thought I landed in the United States of America,
Yeah.
Alaska. I thought all of the United States had snow and caribou. I didn't know there was a thing called a cow. I
Yeah.
thought all meat was caribou.
Yeah.
So,
How was your American experience after that?
I tell you, we had a hard time in Alaska. There were 8 kids, 2 parents. My mom didn't drive. My dad was the only one who worked. We had a Toyota Corolla, and we all piled in.
Yeah.
And so the initial experience was a struggle. And you know, I think that was poor planning maybe on my parents' part.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they knew that they were going to have to have us all come from the United States. Like my mother didn't know where we were while we were in the refugee camp. It took days before she found out that we made it out of Vietnam. We're in a refugee camp and somebody's got to come get us.
I can't imagine as a parent what that's like.
Oh, she said she cried. She cried all day, every day, worrying and wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God for the Red Cross.
How old was your sister that was in charge?
14. And she barely spoke English.
Yeah. And you didn't speak any English.
I spoke no English whatsoever.
Yeah. So you had to learn the language.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go to the Air Force.
Yeah.
You did eventually become an attorney.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
You have been back to Vietnam.
I have. In 2011, took my parents back to Vietnam.
Why did you want to go back?
Part of it was my mom needed to go back. She never got to say goodbye. She really left Vietnam thinking that she'd eventually go back, and it just never happened. And so she left in 1974, didn't go back until 2011. And you know, I have never seen my mom comfortable in her skin until we landed in Vietnam.
Really?
Yeah, it was astounding. She was just a completely different person.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you get to see the aunt that dropped you off with your grandmother?
I did. And she's actually living in Seattle now with 2 amazing children, who is also in public service. A lot of us Vietnamese folks ended up in public service. And part of it, I think, is the American service in Vietnam that caused us to want to be in public service now.
Tell me more about that.
I think with a lot of Vietnamese families that are refugees from Vietnam, they're going to tell you that they feel a sense of duty and a sense of having to give back to Americans who served in Vietnam. I know for me, I wouldn't be here but for the service members who went to Vietnam. And so a lot of us serve because of it.
Yeah. You have met Vietnam veterans.
Yes, lots of them.
What do you say to them?
I just thank them from the bottom of my heart. I don't think they realize the legacy that they left in Vietnam to this day.
Yeah. Vietnam and beyond.
Vietnam and beyond,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Because a lot of refugee families have children who serve, grandchildren who serve, and we're all sort of moving the machine because we feel an obligation to do it.
Yeah. When you look back at the Vietnam War, what do you think? I mean, what is your perspective on it? I mean, I know it's a long and complicated question, but I mean, you were in it, but I bet you said you didn't really think that much. It just was what was happening. But I'm sure you've looked back at it. What are your thoughts on it?
I'm thankful for American involvement in Vietnam. I don't think that my life would be the way it is, and mine and lots of other Vietnamese people. When you're talking about changing hearts and minds, I think the Vietnamese people had our hearts and minds changed. And you know, is the American way the very best way? We think so.
Yeah. I had somebody tell me that their parents grew up in a village, and when the Viet Cong came to town, they were Viet Cong. Came to the village, they were Viet Cong. When the Americans came, they were pro-South Vietnam. What does that tell you? I mean, is there something to see in all this, and just the fact of, so many Vietnamese have come to the United States, whether refugees or immigrating. Is there a lesson there about the Vietnamese people?
I think Vietnamese people are adaptable, and we have a large sense of assimilating to whoever and whatever's happening, and I think that that's probably the secret of our success, is being able to adapt and assimilate and become a part of the culture, not just an occupying force. And so I think that endeared us to a lot of service members, that we were able to communicate and be able to adapt to them. And I think that's the secret sauce in the Vietnamese culture.
Yeah, being able to adapt.
Yeah, and you can see that now in U.S. society, how well Vietnamese people generally do. I think part of it is learning to become as American as we can.
It's been 50 years since the fall of Saigon. When I say that to you, what do you think?
It blows my mind that it's been 50 years since the fall, and Vietnam has not changed much since then.
Yeah. Does it seem like it was 50 years ago when you got on that helicopter and left the U.S. Embassy?
It never does to people who are old. It seems like it was just recent, but it's not. I had 25 years of service in the United States Air Force. It couldn't have been just yesterday.
Yeah.
But it sure feels like that.
Yeah. It's a day that literally changed your life.
The day that my life completely changed.
Yeah. That's all the questions I have, Trinh. Is there anything else you want to bring up? Anything else you think we need to talk about?
No, I want to thank all of the folks who served in Vietnam. They just can't know the legacy that they left there.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good? All right. Dan was quiet, so we must have been our